Welcome to the meeting room at Global TV Talk Show, a broadcast service of globalbusinessnews.net.
Now, here's your host, Ed Cohen.
This is Ed Cohen in Southern California, and you're on Global TV Talk Show. This is a service of globalbusinessnews.net. Check it out. I think you'll find some good stuff there. Let's welcome Ken Summers in Southern Connecticut, and let's welcome Sarah Daly in the Hartford area. Hello, Ken.
Good morning, Ed. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really good. It's Friday.
Yeah, indeed. And Sarah, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us today. By way of introduction, ever so briefly, Ed and I have been putting together a series of TV talk shows with a variety of real world HR practitioners, folks who live and breathe HR every day on the front line. And what we're doing is we're talking about various subjects that have either arisen from COVID or have been exacerbated by COVID, and how these real world frontline practitioners are dealing with it on a day-to-day basis, and sharing that with our audience with the hope and expectation that the lessons learned and the techniques employed will be of service to others. So it is my great pleasure to welcome Sarah Daly, a friend and colleague who is the head of human resources for an investor relations consulting firm. We won't name the name of the firm, but suffice it to say, Sarah has extensive and deep experience in the financial services sector. And I welcome her. I know Ed welcomes her to the show. And Sarah, do you want to say a word or two of introduction yourself?
Yeah, and thank you both for inviting me on. So really excited to have the conversation today. And to your point, have worked for 25 years now in HR. So have seen and done a lot in my career. And it's been, an interesting ride. And it's interesting to see in the last year or 2 years, how much is changing and how much the role of HR is changing and the workplace. So I think we'll have a great conversation about that today.
I'm sure we will. And Sarah, I know one of the things that we particularly want to talk about is what you've observed about intellectual safety, mental health in the workplace, and mental health for people who are working remotely, and some of the challenges that you've observed over the last 18 months.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is an area of particular interest for me. I have a big passion around mental health awareness. I was a psychology major back in college. So, it's always been something I've had interest in. And it's been interesting to watch over the last year or two, with so much happening with COVID, particularly in people's personal lives, and then just the dramatic changes in the workplace, the impact that it's had. And I still think we don't know the full extent of what that's going to look like, moving forward. And it is challenging as HR folks to try to juggle that. I mean, even for leaders, I was thinking about that earlier this morning. Leaders are even having to play a very different role leading their people, and maybe in some cases not even equipped to manage some of those changes. So I think that's something that we need to, consider as well. When I think about burnout, and we see a lot of people leaving companies, reassessing their lives, and just the amount of the acceleration of work. I mean, now with technology and then Zoom, and people feel like, you can never turn off, and it's just this constant stream of work and things coming at you. And I think a lot of people are just feeling overwhelmed with that. So there's a lot of things, to consider of what that workplace of the future is going to look like. And then just thinking about supporting your employees every day and their needs. Absolutely.
And there is so much just in your opening remarks there. So let's pick some of them off one by one.
Sure.
And let's start with managers, because it's a theme that seems to be emerging from some of these discussions. We had a recent discussion with another HR professional about courage in the workplace. Mm-hmm. And in this instance, I imagine, the courage to say, I need help. And I wonder if you could talk about the role of managers, how you see the role of managers changing, and particularly in light of what we're now seeing as emerging mental health concerns.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot on leaders' plate, and I almost feel like the profile of a leader is changing very much from what it used to be. I think you need to factor a lot more in, your needs of your employees and checking in with them. I think emotionally and mentally, and in some cases, I think people are dealing with some pretty heavy things, and I don't know that in everything that's happened and the speed that and the pace at which we're working, that managers have maybe really been given the tools to help with that shift. I know, I have two people that work for me, and we just started having, like weekly check-ins, and I really try to start off the meeting just asking my team, how are you doing? Like, I want to understand, how are they feeling? People may be stressed or just having a bad week, and just trying to be mindful of all the things that people are going through. And on top of just trying to do all their day-to-day work. So I think managers are playing a bigger role in that, plus trying to just have that connection where a lot of it's virtual now. So that, I think, adds to it, where you don't see each other on a daily basis. I don't think it's as easy to read people when you're virtual and really getting a sense of like what's going on emotionally with your employees or personally, because you may not have as much time to connect with them. And so that, can all impact, the work and the dynamics of your team.
Absolutely. Are there 2 or 3 things that if you were speaking to a management population and you said, here are 2 or 3 things that you really need to do to be aware of and connect with your people to make sure that they're doing okay, what would those 2 or 3 things be?
I think it's important to keep the connection with your employees. A lot of times it's focused on work and what's getting delivered from a work standpoint, but just trying to check in with them and say, overall, how are you feeling? Are you feeling like you can come to work and do your best? Are you struggling with something? I think helping managers know what resources are available to employees as well, because sometimes you're not equipped to deal with something very heavy going on in somebody's life. I know in the course of my HR career, there's been situations where employees have some pretty serious things going on, and I may not necessarily have been equipped to handle that, but knowing that there's resources to provide employees. And that was a big thing that my employer and I, my CEO and I talked about when we did our open enrollment this year, is making sure that we were adding benefits that enabled employees to have mental health resources available to them to help with that. And so managers knowing that they can refer people if they need that, and really making sure employees feel comfortable to say, look, if you're having a hard time, if you need help, my door's open. Come talk to me. I will make time. I think that's really important to check in with people. And it's hard because there's so much work going on constantly, to just take a step back and go, how's everyone doing? Where can I help?
Yeah, but aren't people wary, almost afraid to share?
I think it depends on the leader. I mean, I think going back to what Ken was asking, from a leadership perspective, we talk about that psychological safety. And I think it's important as a leader to allow your people to be open. I think if people aren't sharing things with you, it's going to come back at some point, where you're going to miss something, or something isn't going to be done well, or employee may have a performance issue because, it doesn't come out because they're afraid to say something. And people, I think, appreciate having that ability to go somewhere. I've had it in my own career where I had a previous leader who I felt like, I tried to share where I was having challenges with, and I felt like it was used against me. So I know exactly what you're talking about. And that was not a good working situation. Ultimately, why I left for a different, opportunity, and having a leader that you can have that dialogue. It's like, well, it'll help me get better. It'll help the team be better. And so I think that's a really important thing, to have that open dialogue for that reason.
May I ask you a specific question, and you could deflect it or redirect it if you don't like it. It's okay. Because I'm an outsider here. I'm just a talk show host. So you, as a manager, have you ever, would you start out a conversation with an employee, just a check-in kind of performance, thing, not performance, but just a check-in conversation in this COVID environment. Would you say, without being prompted, would you say, I've had a tough day today. I've got issues at home. I got issues myself about my own performance. Somebody's watching me, and I'm getting really burnt out. How are you feeling today?
Yeah.
But by opening up like that without asking them how are they doing, because you know they're going to have stuff going on, you just don't know if they're going to share it. By just coming out right away and just saying, hey, this is my truth. What's yours?
Yep.
Would that work?
Yeah, I mean, I have done that. I mean, there's a fine line, especially when your comment about like the performance piece of it. But yeah, I mean, I think, if I'm having a really busy week, or maybe I just feel like, things aren't going as well as I'd like them to, I do share that with my team to say, like, there's going to be good times, there's going to be bad times. That's part of us being in a team. We're all here to support each other. And sometimes I find like the people that work for me or my team may have an idea or provide advice that's like, yeah, that helps me get through it. So I think that does help open the dialogue, because I am willing to share. I mean, I've always tried to be very authentic, whether it be with the teams that I've worked with or supported, or with my own teams. And I think that helps facilitate that dialogue to say, not everything is perfect all the time, right? Everybody's going through challenges and struggles. And if we can openly talk about that and help each other get past them, I think that makes everybody better and stronger.
Right on.
So, and if you don't mind me adding, I'm sure that all of us are on multiple mailing lists. One of the ones that I get is, I get McKinsey reports, and McKinsey recently published an article are craving in connection and engagement. And McKinsey goes on to say in the article, and I mention it because it resonates for me, and I suspect it might for you, Sarah, that employees are looking for their managers to be vulnerable and transparent and to make a human connection. And I think that that's what you're talking about in response to Ed's question.
Yeah. And I think in the right way too. I mean, you have to still be the leader. So you have to be mindful about how you don't want to be a complete stressful mess, right? Because then employees sort of feel like, whoa, what's going on here? But I think to your point, sharing that and having that open dialogue. I mean, I remember a previous employee that worked for me that said, I really loved working for you. I felt like you cared about me. I think that helps with retention when you feel like you have a connection with your leader and that they do really care about you as a person, not just you produce work for me, right? I mean, there's so much more to people. And I think it doesn't take a whole lot to just really try to understand people, understand what makes them tick, what's important to them. I think only positive things come out of it. And I know it's hard because people, I think, get nervous about getting too much into personal things about people. That can get a little bit sticky, but I definitely think there's ways to do that and facilitate those conversations and the comfort level of the person. Some people aren't comfortable sharing that, which is okay too.
Exactly. You mentioned a moment or two ago that you either just had open enrollment or preparing for it. Mm-hmm. As you were working with your various vendors and putting together the employee choices, are the employee assistance program people stepping up and making new offerings, or any insights on that you can share?
Yeah, I mean, ours was being a small organization. I think we're still building our benefits plan. So we're continuing to build that every single year as we get to be a larger organization. And that was one area when I came in and was learning about what our benefit offerings were that we didn't offer, just because, again, we were very small. And that was something that, I identified and said, we really need to get some sort of either EAP plan, which we do have now. And then in addition to that, there was another sort of health kind of service that we provide that's online, mobile. So it's like online health, but it also has mental health and a few other things, which gives people access to like online therapists. It's a relatively inexpensive benefit to offer that the company is paying for. And it employees can use as many visits as they want, and it doesn't cost them anything, and they have access to it online, whatever works for them. And that was like a very small, cost to offer employees. And I thought, that's great, because I know, just from experience, mental health benefits are very expensive. I know a lot of people who are like, I'd love to go, but it's too much, it costs too much money. And it's kind of sad when you think about that, because it is something that people need, and to not be able to access it because it's too costly is unfortunate. So, I was really happy to be able to roll that benefit out. And that was something that, my CEO and she was very supportive of that, because I do think that's an important thing to give people resources for, if we can.
Absolutely. Do you have any early data on utilization?
Not yet. It just became effective on October 1st. So, I'll be looking to see, again, we won't, I told my employees, don't worry, we're not going to see, personal, people who's accessing it, just how many people, because I didn't want people to be concerned, like we were looking at data and who was going on and all those kind of things. But I'm really hoping that people will utilize it, because it's also available to their family. So even if you're not in our medical plan, your spouse, your children, can access the benefit too. So I'm really hoping that people use it.
That's a terrific offering. Congratulations on being able to sell that to the leadership.
Yeah. And it didn't take much to sell it. So yeah.
Even better. And Ed, I mean, I know you literally talk to people all over the planet, and employee assistance programs and mental health concerns in the workplace seem to be emerging globally. Have you seen that, Ed, as you talk to people?
Well, in the US, Canada, but in Europe, there's a whole lot of privacy issues there, and people are, I don't want to call it whacked out, but they're really concerned about privacy, and they don't want to talk about anything personal to me, or who knows if there was anyone else. But in other situations, like on Monday, we had a call at early. My early was 8 a.m., your 11. And then following that at my 9, I worked in Geneva with a company owner who was just acquired. The company was he sold out, now is working for this bigger company. And then at my 11, so, at my 10, I mean, so 8, 9, 10. My last meeting on Monday was with a young lady. Well, it's about 35, young mother. She's a lawyer in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and working with corporate mobility issues and immigration and employment law and the Social Security benefits and things like that. And very, very open minded and very open about providing whatever care 24/7 employees need.
So the concept.
So around the world, just to give you a quick.
Yeah, the concept is spreading. So Sarah, here we are. We're in the middle to end of October. I think we're all praying that we don't have a twin-demic this winter.
Yeah, I know.
But we won't go down that rat hole today. But as you look to 2022, what are you optimistic about in terms of the work environment and how things are going to continue to evolve?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I hate to use the term things are going somewhat back to normal, because I don't think normal is going to be what it was before. But we've started to get folks back in the office. My current company, we were doing a hybrid model, which seems to be working, so that we give people flexibility, but we're also trying to keep that connection with people. So we do little things during the week, which is nice to just bring the team together and have fun. So I think, that will be one of the challenges, is the remote piece and keeping engaged with people. And I think, we're continuing to bring new talent on, to the organization. There's a lot of opportunities. I mean, we're very fortunate. Our company is, doing very well and growing very quickly at this point. So that's really exciting to see that even coming out of this, where I know some areas are challenged, we're doing very well. And like everybody else are trying to find talent to, join the organization, but there's a lot of, I think, great opportunity for people. So I think I'm excited about, the talent that we're going to bring on board to help the company grow. But as I said earlier, I think that's going to be the challenge, is making sure that they're, connected in, especially with the remote, and that's another area I would say, Ken, that I'm really interested in reading so much about sort of the remote and the work of the future kind of thing. And I know everybody really likes the flexibility of work from home. But I'm really kind of curious, and I've sort of been looking around. I haven't found anything about, what else is behind that, because there is some loss of connection, and I'm not saying I'm a fan of the hybrid or, the ability to have more flexibility, but there is some level of connection that you do lose in that. So you wonder what else is behind that, with people sort of saying, like, I don't want to go back to the office, other than maybe certainly still from a health perspective, having concerns and things like that. So I feel like that's still an area that we need to probe a little bit more to understand, where some of that comes from, and again, how do we keep that connection? Because I've heard a couple of companies or HR leaders talked a lot about, they're seeing turnover, and a bit of it is in the people that have only been with the company for a year or two, and most of them started remote. And so
Right.
they don't have as much of a connection when it's like, oh, I only talk to you on Zoom. I don't really know you that well, so I don't have that much of a connection to the company. So it makes it a little bit easier for, me to go somewhere else, because I don't feel as attached to the team. So I do think that's something we're going to continue to have to think about, like, how do we keep that collaboration and connection with people? It's not quite the same when you're virtual.
Right. And to that end, and, it's not exactly, a psychological safety question,
Mhm.
but how are you handling onboarding during this environment?
It's a blend, because we do have some folks in the office. So we are doing, for people that are based in our headquarter office, we do have people coming in for onboarding. So they're doing it in person. And then otherwise, if we do also have some remote employees. And so we just do it virtually. And then we've been trying to find opportunities, now that it's getting a little bit better, to bring the team together. So in a couple of months, towards the end of the year, we'll be doing like an all company meeting that we'll bring everybody in for. And some of the teams may come in and do something on their own specific to their teams. And then really just trying to set up meetings with people so they get to know other people on the team, and build the connection, so they get to know people.
And the reason I ask is, and I think it is to your point, one of the things that concerns me and globally is that
Mhm.
for people, particularly folks who are less mature in their careers, for them to be recruited remotely, onboarded remotely, work remotely, I worry very much that they're missing those opportunities to get the coffee machine or water cooler conversations that clues them
Yeah.
into the culture of the company, all the unwritten rules that can make one successful or a failure in a business. And I wonder if you've observed any of that.
Yeah, not maybe specific to my organization, because most of our, more earlier career folks are in the office. So we've, tried to connect them together so they feel like they have a peer group. And then, some of our senior leaders are in the office, so they do have interaction with that. But I think that's something where, if you have remote people, I think you have to make a more concerted effort to think about how do you have a more formal way, to connect them. So they're going to have the connection to the leader, but how do they also get exposure to other people if you're not physically, in an office somewhere with people? So that, I think, is something that I would imagine, companies are going to have to come up with a stronger plan around and be probably more structured, I guess would be the word I would say, to really incorporate that in and be mindful of, this, who does this person need to interact with, or how do we give them exposure to people when it's not just going to be a random, like, oh, I ran into you in the cafeteria or something like that.
Right. Yeah. So if you don't mind, I'm going to ask you, a follow-up that's kind of a little bit broader.
Mm-hmm.
As we've all learned a lot in the last, well, it's not 18 months anymore, it's more like 20 months. And, as the head of HR for your business, I'm sure that talent is one of your primary focus areas. How do you see talent management evolving in the post-COVID world? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, certainly, like every company, it's a challenge, in terms of finding talent. And I think, just even through my own experience, I was in a job search last year. I think we need to evolve a little bit more to maybe not necessarily look for the perfect candidate that checks every single box, which you still feel like a lot of that happens, to really try to see what skill sets people bring to the table. And I do think after, COVID in particular, I like this concept last year, which I saw was, that there could be, like, for example, for leaders, there could be more than one profile of what you need from a leader in an organization. Somebody might need to be more of a crisis management type of person. Somebody else might need to be more of a, communications type of person. So I do think that it sort of changes the dynamic a little bit about, developing people. I think that's another challenge. It's a little bit of my learning background. I was just talking to some learning vendors over the last couple of days, and just how much they've had to shift everything to virtual. And they're actually finding that in some cases it's more effective than the in-person training that they were doing. So that's another consideration, I think, in terms of developing people, and thinking about, how do you retain talent, I think, is the key thing, is really, and that's really, a lot of what I'm focused on now with my CEO, is really trying to think about, what's important to our employees, what's going to keep them engaged and wanting to stay with our organization. So it's a lot to juggle, and give people different opportunities to do something new, because so much is changing so quickly. I think that's one of the challenges, is just trying to keep up with, just the workload, the level of speed in which everything is going, and then have time to really stop and think about, like, okay, like, what do we want to do longer term?
Hi, this is Ed, and I thank you for tuning in to Global TV Talk Show, a unit on globalbusinessnews.net. We broadcast to the world, as you know by now. So I wanted to make sure that you understand that our programs are advertising supported. We're grateful for co-sponsors, advertisers. They have a marketing budget coupled with a strong desire to be associated with our top quality program. And of course, I'm grateful. Thank you. So for the next few minutes, you're going to see some commercials. It's mostly very low key, and our prices are very, very reasonable. Our exposure for the advertisers go 12 months and beyond. Some of our advertisers have been with us since March, April of 2020. And Google Analytics has tracked over 125,000 what they call audience page views, which means you looking at this page, that's a page view. Now, if you happen to go to one of our other shows, or to our radio broadcasts, or to our newspaper or magazine, those become additional page views as measured by Google Analytics. And so when they say 125,000 since spring of 2020 up through Labor Day, a month ago, That's pretty good numbers. And the past 30 days, Google Analytics has measured just under 6,000 audience page views. And that, according to them, is a 42% increase in audience participation over the month of August. So thank you very much. Well, here's our advertisers, and we'll be back in just a couple of minutes or so, and we'll proceed with this interesting conversation. Thank you.
This episode from the meeting room of Global TV Talk Show is brought to you by
The Bridge School, the accredited international online private school of choice, at bridgek12.org.
Porch Light Rental and Destination Services. Reduce your renter lump sum or managed relocation costs. Visit them at porchlightrental.com.
And by airs.com. With our full range of services, we can help design and manage your international relocation. Find us at airs.com.
Primestone Partners, featuring corporate, government, and developer housing solutions, as well as senior-level advisory services. Find them at primestonepartners.com.
And by International Auto Source. We are the vehicle experts for expats, featuring all major brands of automobiles with flexible solutions and financing. On the web at intlauto.com.
Become a global player in your field.
Cross Culture to Go provides virtual support for your global business and career success.
We can help you thrive in 140 plus countries and markets.
On the web at crossculturetogo.com.
Something that's really neat is that the Bridge School partners with various organizations to provide learning for their students. For example, we partner with a major ballet company, and we are able to enroll several of their students into our school. So now not only is the student able to participate in a school and have a seamless transition while they're very active in their ballet career, but now they have other dancers that are with them that are doing some of the same courses. So it's almost becoming a camaraderie where they're taking similar courses, they're working together on their ballet, and really being able to form this great partnership with these organizations to provide a needed service. A lot of times there are student athletes who will spend hours and hours at the gym or at the basketball courts, wherever it is. And if they're attending a traditional school, they're in school from 8 to 3. They get a quick snack, and then they're at the gym for 3 to 4 hours in the evening. Coming to us and having that partnership, they're able to break that up throughout the day. They can have a morning practice, get some schooling in, have an afternoon practice, finish their schooling in the evening. So there's that flexibility. And additionally, if there are tournaments or performances, it's fantastic because if there's a week where they have shows straight through, they can take that week off of learning and then pick back up when they're done. So it offers this great flexibility. And for the program owners of these sports leagues, it is a win-win situation for them because they see this need. They see this need that their students need to make sure that they are obtaining the grades necessary to be successful adults in our country and in other countries. But it provides them an environment where they can be successful at both.
Hi, I'm Sergei Gorbatov.
I'm Angela Lane.
Together we are researchers, writers and practitioners in the field of human resources.
And we've also been multi-country, multi-assignment career expats.
We owe our professional development and growth to a very large extent to the international assignment opportunities that we have had.
But in a world where distributed work may become the norm, we also want to understand what will happen to the nature, duration, and purpose of international assignments.
Together with our colleague, Julian Dalzell from the University of South Carolina, we're undertaking a study on the future of expatriation.
and we'd value your contribution. You can participate in this important study by completing a simple 10-minute questionnaire.
Access the questionnaire by typing in your browser tinyurl.com/expert study. That's tinyurl.com/expert study. You can also find the link here on Ed's website next to this video.
Thank you for joining us in this study. In return for your contribution, we'll provide you with a copy of our research.
And of course, you'll be invited to an exclusive webinar hosted by Ed, where we will share our findings right here on Global Business News.
And so please go to tinyurl.com/expat study. Take the survey so that we can better understand the future of expatriation.
I could not possibly agree more. In fact, I'm going to be a bit of a heretic for a minute, and wonder if you might be able to share any experiences or your own insights. But as I talk to clients, retention of talent is an unending subject. It's either I can't get them in the door, and once I've got them in the door, I can't keep them. And of course, that's a very broad statement, and it's different for every company. But there seems to be a pretty strong pattern out there. And one of my clients was talking about, well, I'm going to have to raise pay for Mr. X, who has got a competitive offer. I've come to believe over the years that responding to someone who has an offer to leave, and by saying, well, here, I'll give you another $5,000, is actually a disincentive. And I wonder if you might have any insights or your own experience on that.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, Ken. I think, for something as minor as like $5,000, I think when people have made the decision to leave, it's usually for other reasons, and you've seen it where, in previous roles or, in my HR career, it's at times when you've made counter offers to people, a lot of times, you rarely retain the person, or if you do, they end up leaving a little while because usually they're leaving for other reasons. I think even if people feel like I'm slightly underpaid, like if I love my boss, if I love the work that I'm doing, if my work environment's really good, you don't want to lose that. So I think there's much more to it than just the compensation piece. And a lot of the articles now about why people are resigning is it's not, some of it's pay, where employees I think are being more selective and looking for jobs because they're like, well, I want to get paid more. But in terms of retaining and keeping people who are at existing positions, I think it's much more about, what we talked about early. Do I have a connection with my leader? Do I feel appreciated? Do I feel valued? Do I feel like I'm doing work that gives me purpose personally? Do I feel like it's meeting my needs as an individual? I think COVID made people rethink a lot of what's important to them in their life. And especially spending time with family. I think that's one of the biggest challenges with the amount of work that a lot of companies and people are, feeling burned out because there's so much work and so much to do. And people are like, I want to be able to spend time with my family. I want time off. I need to take some time to recharge. And those things I think are now more important to people than just the compensation part.
Oh, I absolutely agree. In fact, I think the balance of power in the labor management relationship is undergoing a profound change. I'm not suggesting that suddenly labor has control, because that's not the case, but the dynamic seems to be shifting quite significantly. And
that's where I think leaders.
Go ahead, please.
I was going to say that's where I was going to say I think that's where I think leaders play an important part of really understanding your people and understanding what's important to them, because it's going to be different for every single person. And I think that goes back to your point. Like if you're offering somebody something and that's totally not what what the reason that made them leave, they're going to go like, you didn't get why, I made the decision to leave. So that, I think that's where it goes, as we were saying at the very beginning of the conversation, is having that connection with your employee and understanding what's important to them, so that you can keep that in mind as you're working with that person and keeping them engaged and wanting to stay with your organization.
If I may, it's 12:06 here, so keep that in mind. Are there lessons? There must be something online someplace for employees to learn how to act or negotiate with a boss. And during this time, you know, they're playing dodge 'em, if you will, you know, so that they're saying to you as the boss, let's just say you're the boss, and they say, well, I'm not getting paid enough, or I don't want to commute every day. I want more time. The past 20 months, I've gotten to know my family and they've gotten to know me better. And I don't want that to change. And so how should employees negotiate, I guess is what I'm getting at. And is it a poker game, or is it a symbiotic we thing, unless the boss wants that person to leave and go, goodbye. And anyway, I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just emoting here.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'll give my perspective. I mean, I think that goes back to the open dialogue, and it should be a conversation. I would say as an employee, you know, if that's something you're going to come to the table with, come with some type of solution versus just saying, well, I don't want to commute, or I want more money. It's like, okay, well, bring the case to me, so to speak, right? Like, you know, give me what you're proposing and we'll see if we can, you know, work something out. So that way it is a two-way dialogue. That doesn't always mean that will work, but I think that is better than just sort of dumping the problem on the table and going, well, what are you going to do about it? So I would say, you know, that's something where it's like, okay, well, if I've been working in this type of scenario, if things have been going well, you know, maybe it's like you're not going to be able to work from home every day, but a couple of days a week, you got to come in, or whatever it is. Like, I think that's where if you propose an idea on the table to say, here, I think this could work. Can we give it a shot? Do you have other ideas? And that just facilitate that dialogue. I think that goes a long way.
And if I may add, I again, you know, I'm getting tired of agreeing with you, Sarah. But I think you're spot on. And you know, and I think it goes back to, as you said, the open dialogue, the leader's responsibility to create a trusting environment where an employee can feel comfortable, maybe not, you know, maybe not great, but comfortable about being able to say, hey, Ed, you know, a lot has changed in the last 20 months. I'd like to talk about how I get my work done, because we both know that the quality of work I produce is great. That's not an issue, but, you know, maybe I'd like to work from home 3 days a week. And if there's that trusting relationship, if there's mutual respect, those conversations are much easier to have. And I would imagine that both of you have observed the same thing, that with some notable exceptions, there's a far greater receptivity to these kind of discussions than there was before December of 2019.
Yeah.
So at least I'm seeing it. I hope you guys are seeing it too.
Well, I think so. I think now, I mean, because we've been living it, we've seen like, okay, like we've managed to, and it was very quick, like when it happened, right? It was like, we had to pivot very quickly to say, oh gosh, this is the new way of working. And so, you know, I think coming out of that, it just gave the idea that there could be more options to look at, you know, and that's some of the interesting dialogue you see now, where there's some companies that like, everybody's got to come back to the office. And so, you know, we talked about that a lot at my organization, of saying, you know, we don't want people coming in just for the sake of, we want you in your chair because we want to see you physically here, but is there a work reason, you know, to be here? And that's again why we try to think about when people are in the office, like, how do we get them to engage and interact with each other, so you're not just sitting there looking at a Zoom call at your desk versus being at home, but there's really some reason why you're coming in to interact with the team.
Absolutely. And, you know, again, you know, to the point that I was making with Ed earlier, he literally around the planet on a pretty regular basis. And my observation is that it almost doesn't matter where you are. These are issues that companies are dealing with, employees are dealing with, and we all seem to be coalescing around some different normal that does involve greater flexibility. And my hope, to bring it back to the initial discussion, is that that will be a contributing factor to greater psychological safety in the workplace, because people will have more choices.
Right. And hopefully those choices are meeting their needs to help them be able to do it the best they can do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Ed, I know we're pretty much running out of time. Sarah, any pearls of wisdom you want to leave us with before we sign off?
Geez, I don't know. I just think the whole dialogue that we've had, I do think it's important to just keep the humanness, as a human resources person, but keep the humanness in the workplace. I mean, I think about what Ed was saying earlier, where, in some areas people don't want to talk about it, but I don't think that's healthy either, because I think you do have to realize that these are real things and people are going through a lot. I think there's still a lot that we don't know of the impact coming out of this. So to kind of just say, oh, everybody put on a brave face, everything's great all the time, is not reality. So I think you have to balance that and create that environment to say, we've got a job to do, we got work to do, we got a business to run, et cetera. But at the end of the day, we're all people here too. So how do we think about that? And how do we help people be in a comfortable place, like you said, have psychological safety? Because when people feel that way, you see it. It improves work, it improves the environment in the organization, it just improves collaboration. I mean, there's a lot of positives to that. So I think it is worth the effort to think about that and keep that as an important priority within your company.
Absolutely. And, Sarah, thank you again for making the time to chat with us. I hope that you'll be receptive to an invitation to come back in the new year.
Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. And perhaps join a summit kind of a thing, which we'll do. Yeah. Anyway,
that could be fun.
Thanks for being on Global TV.
Thank you for joining us in the meeting room at Global TV Talk Show.
Have a wonderful day, and stay safe.